Hey, let me show you my foolproof method for landing $10,000 clients without endless sales calls. In fact, sometimes with no sales calls at all. And best of all, you can set this up today. Okay, so this isn't just theory. These are real $10,000 payments that I've closed with no sales calls. And I've helped hundreds of funnel builders do exactly the same thing. So let me know if this sounds familiar. You spend 2 hours on a discovery call, you give away essentially free coaching, and you feel a little bit awkward trying to close the customer, and then they end up saying like, oh, we don't have the budget, like that's too expensive for us. Now that is time you'll never get back, and in my opinion, what you're talking about there essentially represents the feast and famine cycle that simply never ends. And that was me too. I used to think that if I showed them how much I knew, then they would hire me. But instead, they just took the free advice and they just kind of ghosted. And so here's the fix. What we're going to do is we're going to start with your opt-in form. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start with your opt-in form. As we have traffic move through the funnel, eventually the idea is they end up being on your list. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask a really, really simple question, but this simple question could transform your entire business. I want you to ask this question here, which says, which best describes your business? So I want you to think about what type of client do you need or would you like to have a conversation with who essentially is the most sort of valuable client that you could work with? Who is sort of 10 times maybe more profitable? And what you need to do is ask this question on any kind of opt-in form. And if we look at like my one, if I bring up the real one, you can see I've got a few different answers here. Like I've worked with clients before and I'm ready to charge 10, 20 grand, or I've sold services, but I'm struggling with my pricing, or I'm brand new and I've got no clients yet or anything like that. What you're essentially doing is putting your new leads and any traffic that comes through into sort of 3 buckets. You want to focus on the 10x guys. And yes, in the middle, there will be people who are kind of ready to go. But over here, the ones who are starting out, the ones who haven't got any budget, you want to avoid or nurture them and sell them something slightly different later on. The point that we're trying to make here is that big sales or big money comes from small doors. Big money comes through small doors. So I want you to think about what are the 3 broad buckets that you could categorize your customers in? A 10x, an average, and someone who's just starting out who ultimately you want to avoid. Now, when I first did this or was first told to do this, I assumed that my leads would drop. And actually, if we look at the conversions, my leads stayed actually the same. And in fact, some cases actually got better. So this is a before and after of when we put this question on all of our opt-in forms. And you can see that previously they were around 150 a month. And then afterwards, the number of leads we captured went up. Our conversion rate actually stayed roughly the same. But what was important is that every single time someone answered these questions, I then knew, yes, this is someone who I want to have a conversation with, or I should have a conversation with. Okay, so now that you've filtered your leads coming in, even with qualified leads, sales calls can feel a little bit like a performance, like you're not quite sure how to pitch them or close them. That transition can feel a little bit awkward. If your sales methodology and your funnel depends on the overlap of the right person at the right time and you also being full of energy and enthusiasm every single time, you can burn out. Now, what I realized is that instead of convincing people on Zoom, I could pre-sell them with a short video and then move them to an application form. And so what I ended up building, this literally changed like my entire sales process, is we would get all of our leads come through and they would answer the opt-in question. And remember, we're asking for things like their name, their email, their phone number ideally, and then this kind of qualifier question. In an ideal world, we have a bit of logic that shows people who are the 10x, the average, and people who are just starting out different videos or products afterwards. You don't have to do that. I don't want you to overcomplicate this, but here's what I've done. I then kind of use this idea of like a showroom. And so I would redirect them to a page with a video And the video would explain how I work, how I can solve their problems, the types of problems they have, how they can solve their problems. I mean, my favorite sales methodology in the world is to basically say to someone, this is your biggest problem, right? This is the problem. This is the roadblock. Here's what you're doing now. You're hitting it. Here's the old way of doing it. And here's my newer, faster way of doing it. That's like a 3-second idea on how to create video sales calls. And here's what happened. I would show them how they can solve a specific problem, obviously relating to the lead magnet beforehand. And what I would do is I would then ask them to fill out one of our application forms. And the application form does a few things. First of all, there's nothing more disheartening than getting on a call and then finding out that someone doesn't have the budget. And so I would ask them, how much are you willing to spend? How much are you looking to spend? I would also ask them, well, what are your goals? What is it that you're actually looking to do? And then perhaps most importantly, arguably to me, I would ask, how urgent is this problem? Because someone who's experiencing like a broken bone is more important and is more willing to take action straight away than someone with a bit of indigestion, although indigestion is awful. Let me give you an example. So this is an example of a type of application form that I would use. I'd ask for their name, what's their phone number. And then I'm starting to, again, ask these questions about urgency and budget. Have they ever hit a 10K month before? Do they have a list of current clients? On average, our joining fee is 8,000 or 10,000, or this is one example. And then here we go, timeline. If we agree that this is a great fit for all parties, when would you like to get started? Immediately, or I don't have any plans. This here will basically tell you how awkward a sales conversation could be, or if they're ready to buy immediately. And in this particular case, this Loom video had around 1,100 views. Roughly 37% of people finished it. And I'll show you kind of like the questions that they answered. But we have another one as well that is currently doing about $5,000 a month. And that's only got sort of 300 views. It's, low, but we're getting people on recurring revenue products. And if you look here, some of the answers that people give us, like, do you have a list of current clients? No, yes. That immediately tells me, great, we can do something with this person. Do you currently do over 100,000? Yes. That tells me that they've got the money and they'll have the budget. If we can show you, or timeline is really important. People are looking to get started immediately. This is so critical to know. I've said earlier, big sales or big money comes through small doors. We make these doors smaller and smaller and smaller. Knowing that they have a need is the most important one. That's kind of that first question we ask them on the opt-in form. And then knowing that it's urgent, I need to know that they need to fix this now. This is something they're willing to invest in. And then finally, do they have the resources, i.e. the budget? That's another question that's really, really important to me that I want to ask. And people have to kind of go through these doors. And what I found is the more narrow I made the end result, the more likely someone was to buy at the end. Remember, big money comes from small doors. But this is where things used to fall flat. So after a call, I would send a proposal, and proposals just kind of sit in inboxes. And if you're anything like me, you would just kind of send like, hey, wondering if you've checked it out, seen the proposal, and you're waiting and you're hoping. And then most of the time, nothing really happens. What you need to remember with your clients is that their level of interest over time actually drops. So if you aren't able to capture them within the first sort of 2 days, ideally the first day of having a conversation with them, they're actually less likely to buy from you. And I remember that proposals used to take me ages to figure out how to write and what I was going to say. And so what I did is I replaced my proposal with something called a sales document. Now, the first time I did this, the client paid $10,000 before we'd even spoken. And I thought that was a fluke until it basically kept happening. And now it's just part of our sales process. So a sales doc is a pre-written document. Think of it as if you go around to see some friends and they say, hey, would you like some cookies? You go, yeah, I'd love some. If they then went into the kitchen and had to bake cookies from scratch, you'd be like, oh, that's a bit awkward. Whereas if they say, here's a tray of cookies that I've pre-baked, you go, fantastic, I love that. So a sales document is just a pre-written document focusing on a few kind of core areas. We have a headline and an offer. These two are kind of tied together. If we look at this one, for example, I'm showing 10 funnel builders how to deliver $100,000 results. I talk about the price, Most importantly, I think, is testimonials. So I include a bunch of results that we've got from people, a few FAQs, and critically, what to do if they actually want to start. So what do they do if they want to get going? This document I would then send to people who went through the application process and I thought, yeah, I can probably do something with this. I'm going to help you out here. And I would just send them this document and ask for either a sign-up deposit or sometimes they would just pay in full. And again, these are all clients who used this document and paid and bought from me just reading through this document. And so if we want to avoid awkward calls, we have 3 doors that we want people to walk through. Remember, big money comes through small doors. First of all, what is the need? Secondly, is there urgency? And then finally, do they have the budget? And we want to make sure that they can go through this and end up making a purchase without necessarily having to have lots of backwards and forwards. I just want you to imagine if sales really was that easy for your business. It feels like fluke when it first happens and when your funnel sort of filters out meaningless people and then sells for you. For me, it's a dream and I wouldn't change anything about my business now. Now, if you want this exact qualification question session and the sales doc template, you can use this QR code on the screen right now, or you can grab it down in the pinned comment or the description. And if you want to see how I use a funnel like this and then work with my clients and then guarantee them $100,000 results, I want you to go ahead and watch this video right here that's appearing on the screen, and I will take you through my process that shows you how to get $100,000 worth of results for your clients, even if you're starting out, even if you're starting from scratch.